Welcome to the April edition of Table Talk. It's really good to have you with us. A great big shout out to Classic Interiors for powering Table Talk each and every month. Go give them a visit. They have beautiful dining sets that will be perfect for you to have your own Table Talk discussions. And a shout out to our friends over at Gandolfo's for providing our delicious lunch. We have an incredible panel today, and we're going to start off by letting them introduce themselves. Let's start right here with you, Scott.
Yeah, my name is Scott Southwick. I am the Grand Master of Southwick Black Belt Academy. We've been doing that for a few years. And my experience, obviously, in martial arts, and my background is with this topic is also with the. I spent 15 years with the Air National Guard in the Chapel Corps, and so we worked with the airmen and soldiers and their families in crisis and that kind of stuff as well.
I am Josephine Thyberg, and I'm the new director of the Bingham Crisis Center in Blackfoot, and we deal with domestic violence and sexual assault. We've been around since 40 plus years. I've been in the agency for 33 years. And again, we offer shelter, counseling, help. We can do some court help, stuff like that. So.
And I'm Christine Adams, and I am a supervisor at Judicial District 7 CASA, and CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocate. And when a child is removed from their home due to an unstable home environment, abuse, neglect, drug use, any reason a child might be removed from their home, the judge appoints a guardian ad litem, and that's what we are, a nonprofit organization with volunteers that spend hours of their time advocating for children, going through the court system, making sure their best interests are met, and basically being their voice in court.
I'm Tim Sapowski. I'm with Allen R. Harrison Law. I am the Director of Business Development. We have a unique aspect of dealing with special needs in estate planning, adult guardianships for individuals with special needs. I also am the Foundation Director for DWI here locally as a nonprofit there. And then I also am an advocate through Take a Stand and Let Your Voice Be Heard, where we focus on certain aspects of sex crimes, and we have a 3-tier system where we look at different aspects associated with sexual abuse cases, and so that's what I do.
All right, well, thank you all for being here. As we look at everything that's been happening in our country, our community, across the world, priorities is something that continues coming up. Understanding our priorities and also recognizing that there is always more to every story than meets the eye. So that's where we're going to dive in with this conversation. I received an email that really sparked some interest in my heart and mind. Someone talking about the fact that kids who are acting out often get labeled and blamed, and yet beneath the surface, they are dealing with so much more, so much trauma. So we're going to start right there with the fact that there's always more to every single situation than meets the eye. So let's begin. When it comes to kids and the trauma that they deal with at home or at school, or with the images that they see, what concerns you most? Let's begin down here with you, Tim.
I think what concerns me the most is, like you said, people's perspective. As a parent myself with 3 young kids, it's always interesting to see how they react in public. I have 2 kids that have been diagnosed on the autism spectrum. And so when you see other parents judging you and to a point degrading you instead of supporting you and building you, and it's not a very pleasant thing to go through as a parent. There's a movie that I love called Vantage Point, and it basically takes you through different steps of a situation, and it goes from different people's vantage point, where they were standing during the event. And I love that aspect in my life because I can step back and say, okay, this is how I'm looking at it right now. what's the other vantage point that I could have? What other things could I see from the other person's perspective? I had a friend share with me one time when I was going through my divorce. She said, there's 3 sides to every story: theirs, yours, and the truth. And I've loved that, and I use that in everything that I do, that there's 3 sides to every story. I don't know the other side. And if I can keep that in mind, I could be more open to supporting those around me and not have to be so dead set on my way is the way.
I absolutely love that, because right now, as we look at the news cycle, there is so much rush to judgment, a lot of impulsive behavior and action. And looking at things from different vantage points is certainly a game changer. So thanks for sharing that. Christine, you are right there in the trenches, seeing the impact of what kids go through. What comes to mind for you?
Your first question, kids with trauma and traumatic experiences, it does cause severe behavior, and people on the outside are so eager to diagnose that behavior. Well, if they were my child, I would do it this way, or that child needs to be disciplined. But what they're not looking at is that the trauma that's behind it is causing this behavior. It's insecurity, it's anxiety, it's depression. And if we can get to the root of the behavior, quite often it's easier to change.
I love that. I remember some years ago, I interviewed a mother of an autistic child, and she was talking a lot about the judgment that she would feel if this child melted down in a grocery store. And she said she got to the point where she would say, I'm not an expert in autism, but I am an expert when it comes to my son. And so I think, as you were talking, Christine, that really came to me, trying to understand. And like you said, Tim, step back and look at things from different vantage points is so important. We're in such a fast-paced society that sometimes we don't pause to look from different vantage points. Josephine, you certainly have seen a lot with what you do. Same question. What comes to your mind as you think about the trauma that kids are facing?
I think lack of understanding can be a lot, and when everybody's going through a lot of stuff, people don't stop and say, I wonder what's going on at home. They maybe not understand that maybe mom's is dealing with an abusive alcoholic husband maybe, and they just had a huge fight, and this son or daughter just saw mom get severely hurt. And so not understanding when kids are, depressed, or they're not doing well, or they come to school not dressed the best, you don't realize that what's happening at home. And we don't realize, we're kind of just, again, we're so focused on, okay, this is how we're going to look. We're not going to realize that another family might be going through hard times. So just understanding that, again, this child that is maybe, being made fun of or bullied may, coming from abusive home and or has been recently sexually abused. We don't know. And so sometimes just stopping to say and asking a child, how are you doing? That is huge. And can I help you? So.
I love that, because so often when we see bad behavior, you have this chorus of individuals saying there's not enough discipline, there's not enough structure, and everybody armchair quarterbacks it. But at the end of the day, how often do they really pause and ask that child what's going on?
Right.
So important. And from your perspective, you're in the business of maybe being able to offer an outlet.
Yes. It's really interesting because we often look at the environments and we want to look at things. My interest is in what can the kid do now, because the reality is they can't pick the hand that's been given to them, but they can figure out and we can teach them the why. They need to reframe, they need to look at things, they need to adjust, and they need to grow and be able to come back from these situations and how to act and not react. That's a huge element that, we need to understand and help create everything else, but the reality is kids have it rough, especially these days, because there's so much information, but they're never given how does that apply to me directly.
Right. They're kind of caught in the chaos,
Right.
so to speak. And I love that you're able to use the Southwick Black Belt Academy to maybe help in that aftermath. And I would imagine it also helps parents as well.
Well, it does. So as an example, as a quick example, you have a kid who comes in, he gets bullied, or he gets into a fight. At the end of the fight, everybody rushes to give him, tell him what he did wrong and how he's going to be punished, and how he's going to be, all these things out there, and everybody's pointing fingers at each other. Instead, we'll get a kid that comes in, that gets to fight, and as soon as we try to do things like debrief him, right? And so a simple debrief goes like this. So what actually was going on in your head? What was happening? And at the end, a lot of people don't realize at the end of a combat situation, win, lose, draw, whatever, kids will start crying, especially little boys, and that's very traumatic, and they don't understand. At the end, why was I crying, even if I won the fight? And it's like, you're simply coming down off of combat mode, right? Your fight or flight mode. As you move it back into your parasympathetic nervous system, you release a lot of stuff, and when you're not used to that, you cry, and then the kids are re-traumatized, and they're like, well, I had this terrible trauma. Mom and dad were fighting, or something else was that, and I was all shaky, and I was crying, and I was immobile. What did that do to me? Well, am I weak? Am I terrible? And that's not the case at all. They're reacting appropriately. They just need to know how to frame it and put it into a perspective that is useful to them.
So true. We are such a family-oriented community that I sometimes believe it's easy to just think that everybody has that structured support at home. And maybe because there is a lot of that, when people see situations that are outside what they deem as a good family environment, there might be some rush to judgment. Have you guys experienced some of that rush to judgment where people are almost taking a higher stand and saying, well, if you just did it the right way, then you wouldn't be dealing with that?
Yeah, there's a song that I was thinking of as we were all sharing. I think it's Sawyer Brown. It's They Don't Understand. And in the very beginning of the song, it's this scenario of this woman's on the bus, and her kids are acting out, they're misbehaving, they're going crazy, and these people around them are just judging them. And at the end of the thing, he says, look, she says, please forgive them. They've been up all night. Their dad just died. That's the situation, but the people in the bus didn't know that. And that's what happens, I believe, in our community. And because I've been told several times, well, if people would just take the screens away from their kids, right? We would have so much better influence. People just throw their kids in front of the screens. As a child, guess what I did? I sat in front of a VHS system, and it was a TV when my mom wanted to do something, right? When she wanted to clean or do something. So it's not that much different from the older generation. Is it more accessible now? Is it more mobile? Yes. But even in my generation, that's what we did. We sat at home, and I can remember all the Disney movies I watched and all that stuff. It's not that much different. And once we realize that and say, okay, maybe it's not so much the throwing them in front of the screens, but it's how we're approaching things. And I think that's one of the issues I have with some of the times from the older generation that judges the younger generation, is there's this generational gap of, well, we did it the right way. And we need to get out of that. And we need to come together and be unified as a society, as families, and just say, hey, that worked when you were younger, but maybe it didn't, because look at me now, right? Like, you can judge that based on that, but I think it's something that you have to look at and say, how do we come together now? How do we not have the first thought being someone's doing something wrong, instead of saying, how can we help build you up?
So true. And that rush to judgment really does not do anything to help improve the situation. Christine, what examples have you seen of that rush to judgment?
Quite often, when a child has been removed from their home, they act out in pretty much all of their environments. And the first one that comes to mind is school. And getting through a school day when all of their classmates have parents, they have homes to go home to, it's intimidating. And now all of a sudden they're in a foster home, or they're with another family member, and they do act out. And I would say it has improved dramatically over the years. Teachers, school administration, other parents in the school are much more aware of that now, and I feel like it's progressing. And we are getting to a stage where people are more forgiving and understanding. But that acting out, typically, and I can even speak from personal experience, we had a son that was bipolar, and it was in the 90s, and it was not acceptable. And we had teachers threaten to spank him. We had teachers cry when they found out he was going to be in their classroom. My kid was a great kid. He just was different and challenged, and he had anxiety. And I think if I'd had my son now in elementary school, it would have been a lot easier than 20, 25 years ago. And so I do think we are making progress, for sure. There is more awareness, but we do still need to come a long ways.
I love that. I can't imagine how awful that must have felt to have that judgment coming at you from teachers when you know your son's heart.
Right. He had an incredible heart, and we were first-time parents. We did not know how to parent a child that had bipolar. We learned. We did everything we could and did the best that we could, but there was a lot of judgment, and that was very difficult.
I bet.
And I would add, I think that sometimes it's also the intent that we perceive, like me as a parent. And what I mean by that is it's how I feel, not necessarily how they make me feel. Right?
I like that distinction.
And what I mean by that is they don't intentionally judge you in a lot of aspects. It's their reaction to the situation. And as a parent in the situation, I become defensive. And I become like, oh, they're staring at me. And I kind of also put the judgment on myself from that perspective of they're just coming at it from their perspective, and then I'm receiving it the way that I'm receiving it. And that's hard to overcome as a parent when you have specifically young kids and you're like, oh, there's this standard and I'm not living up to the standard and I want to live up to the standard. And you become frustrated as a parent. Your kid can feel that. It just becomes this consistent cycle of, okay, now I'm feeling the pressure from the outside, and then I'm not being the best I could be as a parent. The child knows that, they feel it. It just becomes this cycle of process.
So you're saying that people, even adults, react instead of act, and so, but we expect our kids to be able to act like adults. We hold them to a standard that we can't reach. So I think that's that we fall short. That's the word I'm looking for.
So true. I mean, we're dealing with underdeveloped brains, and yet we sometimes expect them, as you pointed out, both of you, to do things that even adults with fully developed brains struggle with. Josephine, how about you?
Well, I was just thinking when everybody was talking that, obviously when you're raising children, they don't come with a booklet of do this when they act this way. And that's for moms or dads. And so sometimes you get parents that are uneducated. Given the booklet of, okay, when your kid does this, you got to do this, or when they act up, you do this. So when all of a sudden you're seeing them out in the store and you're seeing kids running everywhere, maybe that mom doesn't really know what to do. She knows that they're her kids. She knows that she needs to make a mind, but she knows when she tries to make a mind, they act even worse. So unfortunately, sometimes it's easier parenting to just let them be. Unfortunately, people don't like that. They're like, oh, why is that mom letting the kids run? But sometimes that's all she knows. Or she's trying to focus on, I need to get shopping done. I got a half hour before I need to get home. I need to focus on this. We sometimes don't think about, oh, I need to keep my kids in line. I got to do this. I got to make sure I get home. Dinner's got to be done. And so, just, again, going back to not understanding what someone is going through. Again, sometimes, I mean, I got married very young. I got married at 16, and I would have had no clue how to parent at that time. I thought I did because that's what you do. You think you know it all, but you don't. And so when you start kids are never the same. I mean, one child could be an easy child. The next one is so many. They might have some developmental problems. They might have some other problems that now that child is taking up all of your time, and this other child doesn't get a lot of care.
You have to kind of pick and choose your battles.
Exactly.
Don't you?
And so just, again, not understanding what this mother or father's going through. Again, you don't know if they just gone through a divorce, the abuse, the sexual abuse, anything like that. Sometimes, we've had parents that even dad comes in and says, Mom just left. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to turn. I don't know what to do because they never had to deal with it before. And so it's hard not knowing everybody's situation and just having compassion on, it's a tough world out there.
It is.
And unfortunately for the kids, you've got the internet that can be good and be bad. And if unfortunately a mom is trying to work a couple jobs, dad's doing whatever, or vice versa, they're not watching a child. And unfortunately, a child may be reaching out to the wrong person on the internet. And that obviously sometimes leads to disasters.
So true. I mean, it's interesting to me that once upon a time, we were all encouraged to find a role model or a mentor. And now if you ask young kids, a lot of the people that they will name are peers, YouTubers, influencers who are the very same age and who don't have the benefit of having gone around the block a few times to have some wisdom. So I think you're exactly right. Sometimes they're just reaching in the wrong places. Christine, as we were having lunch, you mentioned that you really see that cycle. And it does become a cycle. Children learn what they live. You have kids who were in the foster care system, and now they're parents, and they're going through the foster care system with their own children.
Right.
Help us understand that a little bit more, if you would.
Well, I mean, we learn what we live, for sure. And so we've got these children that have been in the foster care system, and they've gone home, they've been reunited, but they're still basically living in the same home without the safety threat present, but a lot of the practices remain the same. And so it's a lifelong battle for these kids to relearn housekeeping, parenting skills, how to feed an infant when it needs to be fed, how to handle their own anxiety as a parent. Well, my mom turned to drugs, so maybe that's what I will do. Kids learn the behavior that they live, and so quite often you're right. We do have kids that age out of foster care or reunify with their parents and then have their own children, and then they enter the system.
So it really is about trying to break the cycle, and I would imagine you see that a lot as well, Josephine.
Yes. Yeah, and unfortunately sometimes until, unfortunately any situation goes into the criminal system, sometimes the cycle's not broken. I mean, that's when you find because I've been there long enough that I've seen, I was there when their mom came in and they were young kids. And now I started seeing them come in with their kids, and so it's definitely a generational thing if the cycle's never broken. And either law enforcement gets involved and someone gets some kind of treatment. And it's hard because somebody's like, okay, we're going to make the batterers go to batterers treatment. That's one thing, and that's good. But if the victim of the situation doesn't get help, then she doesn't know how to move past that. So he's trying to make things different, and she's just waiting for that next hit to come, because that is just what she's waiting for. You know, or if he's going to get angry one day, maybe he's learned in group of, okay, I'm going to do this when I get angry. She's expecting to get hit. So her reaction to him is not going to be the healthiest, because she's expecting to get hit. And so she doesn't really know how to deal with this person that's trying to make changes. So unless we get some changes and counseling through all the whole family, it's more likely it will happen again. And even with the kids need that outlet of saying how frustrating it is to see dad so angry, or what dad did to mom, or mom did to dad, vice versa. And unfortunately, the kids are put in the middle. They get hurt. And unfortunately, the pets get injured. And sometimes if the perpetrator, the batterer, doesn't get to mom the way he wants to, he will abuse and use the children. And if that doesn't work, he'll abuse and use the pets. And you know how our kids are with pets. They are just, that can be their life sometimes. And to know that, I mean, unfortunately, we've had fathers murder a pet right in front of a child. And that has lasting effects. And you wonder why our kids are growing up with so many different problems, because of what they've seen.
Yeah.
And not a lot of counseling to get help with that.
They can't unsee that. And sometimes there is that mindset, well, you don't need counseling, you just need to get a little bit tougher. Scott, I imagine that with what you do, you're dealing a lot. I mean, it's physical, but it's also very mental. You're helping people make shifts in mindset and become a little bit more disciplined.
Yeah, it's really, man, you guys have been great. I'm just listening to everybody and absorbing. And there's some amazing stuff that goes on with how we deal with kids and adults too. I mean, the biggest thing is that we have to start changing our habits. And anybody who's ever tried to lose weight or change their habit or do get more fit or do anything knows how hard it is to change habits and mindset. The habit of being mentally strong is not something that is that's generally taught to us. Mentally strong in the past has been suck it up and go do your own thing. Suck it up and don't talk about it.
Right.
Rather than, okay, let's develop the community that I need. Let me get the support that I need to do. Let me get the tools that I need to do, and then take the responsibility on myself. When we start talking about like victims, I was doing a seminar one time and some lady started yelling at me because she's like, you're victim blaming. I never blame the victim. But if the victim never takes responsibility for what they can control, and kids, adults, anybody, if we never take responsibility for what it is that we can control, they can never end up having power over it, and they always stay in that victim role. So if we have somebody who's got domestic violence, they're the worst ones. Women that have been abused are some of the worst students, because they really, all their power has been stripped from them. It's been stripped from them forever, and they have this habit of saying, I have no power. That's exactly what you were talking about. Yeah. And they have no power, and they don't move into it. And the vast majority of women we go through, we work with and we do things. And there are a few that eventually go, oh, I can do this. I can take responsibility for my personal safety. I can put myself into a better situation. I can pick people around me that I've got, but their confidence has been shattered, because when you have bad people around you and you pick bad people to be put around you, that betrayal is there, and eventually, instead of putting the betrayal on the other person, they put it on themselves, and that becomes a habit. And success and failure is a habit. And that's what the people have got to be able to, and that's what we're all coming at it from different angles. But ultimately, that's what we're doing. We're developing habit of strength and moving outside of survival mode into action mode instead of reaction. So.
I love that. And, so often as you were talking about the silence, if you look around, there are a lot of messages out there that suggest that silence equals healing. And that isn't exactly the case. You can't heal something that you're not willing to bring out into the light.
Yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking about as a parent, I have my own issues. And until I'm willing to recognize that, I'm going to continue in that cycle. Until I can acknowledge that I have things I need to work on as a parent, that I don't know everything, and that I can be open with my children and express that to them. I had experienced the other day, we're getting ready for school. We're running late. It was right after that big rainstorm with all the wind, and you felt like you were in a tornado, but you weren't. And my kids go outside and play. We've got some construction down the road. They're supposed to go get in the car. Well, guess what my 6-year-old did? He did not get in the car. He ran down the road to the dirt pile and decided to play in the dirt pile with the brand new shoes I just bought him. And guess what? His 8-year-old brother wasn't too far behind him. And so now I've got 2 boys. I've got a 10-year-old in the house that's refusing to leave and go to school. I hate school. I don't want to go to school. There's bullies, blah, blah, whatever it may be. And so I've got all this pressure going on as a parent. Like, I need to get you out the door. And then I go and I find these kids in the mud. And then I get in the mud because they're not coming to me, and I've got to go get them. And so I went in what I would call nuclear in my eyes as a parent. I was pissed. I don't think there's another term to put it. And the way I reacted was anger and yelling and get in the car. We're going to go figure this out, take their shoes off, wrap it in a blanket, get new shoes, go through this whole process. Now we're late for school. And so I'm yelling at this point as a parent. I'm not in control of my emotions. And I have to acknowledge that. And I have to acknowledge that and be humble enough to do that in front of my kids. To say, hey, look, I have the expectation that you're coming to the car. I have the expectation that you're going to be in control of your emotions and do what I ask you to do and listen. I did not live up to my own expectation as your parent. And I need to apologize for that. And we need to have a conversation about this. Instead of just being silent, saying, I'm the parent, you're going to listen to me, you're going to do what I say, I had to step back and be humble enough to say, look, boys, as a man, and a man of my word, I broke my word to you today because I did not control my emotions. And that's okay. Let's learn from it and grow from it. So that's what that's just an example of how, as parents, we really need to step up and be able to communicate with our children and show them we're not in control of our emotions all the time. And it's okay to be broken in some aspects. It's how we move forward and progress with it that matters.
I love that vulnerability. And I think it's a beautiful thing to be able to use that as a teachable moment. And you're teaching your kids that when you grow up, you still have to take accountability. Beautiful. Scott, did you have something?
Yeah, I had 2 quick things. The first one was exactly what you were saying. Vulnerability does not equal weakness. Mm-hmm. In fact, it's just the opposite. It takes a lot of strength for people to say, I'm vulnerable in these areas, and I need help. Those are the 3 hardest words in humanity. I need help. Or I was wrong. Maybe it's the same thing. I mean, right?
Yeah, that's okay.
The other thing is that in Western society we have this mindset that we want to label things good, bad, up, down, left, right, and we want clean, quick labels on things, and in Eastern philosophy, yin and yang are not inherently good or bad either way. So being angry and being pissed, as you said, was the right response because there was something that was wrong. This is what people don't understand. Being upset is the wrong things. But then we have to discipline ourselves to be able to act in that moment or pause, and pausing is an action, and then putting those things in the way. I see a lot of times where we go, oh, I was really angry. And so we teach kids and ourselves, but we teach kids, well, count to 10, let the anger go by, and then let's move on. No, count to 10, don't rip somebody's face off, and let's take action to deal with the situation that it was there. In retrospect, were you right in being upset? The answer is yes. I mean, using your example.
Yeah. No,
that's
great.
exactly right. You should have been upset. They were misbehaving. They were out of line. They were doing things, and they were very disrespectful to the new shoes, to your time schedule, to each other's agendas, and everything else. On the flip side, as you pointed out as well, what can we do? What can we learn in that moment so that we can learn how to address that better next time?
Right.
Because all we have is rear-facing mirrors. We can look in the now and the past. It's real hard to look into the future.
And I think it's okay to be vulnerable with our
Yes.
kids and say,
Yes.
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 If you yelled at them for whatever reason, I was wrong. You know what? I was upset. We're in a hurry. It's okay to say, I'm sorry and I made a mistake. Because when you start teaching that, they're going to realize, oh, mom told me or dad told me that when I get mad, I can say I'm sorry and I can make a change.
Mm-hmm.
I think the fact that we can go is like, no, it's not okay to get angry. It's like, nope, that's bad. We're all going to get angry. It's what we do when we get angry. Are we hitting? Are we,
Right.
doing, are we
Right.
swearing at people? But it's okay to sometimes get a little frustrated and angry, especially again when you're on the way to work, you're just trying to do it all by yourself, and this is happening. It's okay. The part that's not okay is hitting, all that. There's calling them names, all that stuff, and to admit to your kids, like, you know what, I'm calmed down now, and I'm sorry that I got frustrated, but this is this. So I think admitting to our kids, and they start learning, oh, it's okay to make mistakes. Not like, I made a mistake, I'm going to go hide, or I'm going to run away, or I'm going to lie about my mistake because I'm going to get in trouble. But if I see dad or mom apologize, oh, it's not so bad, because it is okay to, do
Right.
something bad and then, say, hey, I admit to it.
There's a huge difference between guilt and a shame,
Yes.
right? And I think people miss that. And I think a lot of, to be frank, religious people miss that concept because they look at guilt as wrong. I think guilt's a beautiful thing. I think it's built in our DNA to be a beautiful thing, to allow us to adjust, to pivot, to make that change we need. The ashamed is when we jump to it too quickly because we get into guilt, and we've been taught and trained that guilt is bad. Guilt is not okay. I can't feel this way. And then you automatically shift into a shame. And I think that's one of the mechanisms that we have to be careful as parents and as a society. It's okay to feel guilty. It's okay to have guilt. It's okay to make those changes. And that's a triggering point for you to make that change. The part that where you get stuck in the guilt and you prolong yourself in the guilt and you don't change, you don't take the action needed to move out of that. I think that's where we see a lot of issues too.
Right, and people struggle with that. When we talk about emotional, people struggle with some people. We have as many people that struggle with anger issues as they have with feeling good.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, it's okay to feeling good and being happy is okay. Being angry is okay. Being guilty is okay. Being allowing that to fester and becoming toxic and becoming a pattern, that is not okay.
Right. Christine, as you're hearing all of this, what are your thoughts? Do you come face to face with a lot of the blame and shame game?
Yes, we have parents, and I will say that nobody sets out to be a bad parent. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, today I'm going to abuse my children, or I'm going to use drugs instead of another coping method. And quite often there is a lot of guilt and shame that these parents feel. But again, it was not something they decided to be a bad parent. And so if we can move past that, get them the counseling that they need, get them the parenting skills they need, try to undo some of the damage that was done to them as a child, they really can overcome those shameful feelings.
Yeah, no argument here.
Well, something I do with my kids, which I love, is I call it the I am statement. Some people call them affirmations, right? And so every morning before we get to school, as we drive, we hit the roundabout on on Ammon Road, and I just go over with them and I say, okay, who are you? And they know the response. And they'll say, I am kind. I am funny. I am gentle. And we call it the I am statement. And it's the ability for them to go in and have confidence in the school system and say, hey, look. And I've talked with my 10-year-old and said, how do you reset when you get angry, when you have these emotions and these feelings? And he says, well, I don't know. I said, well, why don't you try to say an I am statement? Because then you can acknowledge who you are in that moment and recognize that you're not the moment. And it goes deeper than that to say, look, I am kind. Even though this situation's happening over here, I can overcome that by knowing who I am inside, knowing my true essence and who I am, and speaking my truth. Because I am kind, I am gentle, I am loving. I'm not stupid, I'm not negative, I'm positive.
Right, and so when we have trauma, because everything you're saying is absolutely right, I love it, and we teach kids how to, and adults also, how to be, for lack of a better word, to understand their dangerous side, because we all have it, right? We all have our the side that is protective and whatever. If we don't understand both sides of ourselves, if we don't understand I choose to be kind today rather than I have no other option but to be kind, because that's the only option that I've been given, or whatever, then we have strength, right? Relationships. I choose to be with my spouse rather than she's the only person that would have me. In my case, it might be both, but right? She's the only one that could deal with me anyway. But it's when we sit and we have this again. This is one of the biggest struggles I see in our culture, is that we are so busy not incorporating and grasping both sides of our nature, because we do have two very, very amazing sides of our nature. We look at our pop culture and we see Star Wars, and you're either on the light side or you're on the dark side. Well, the reality is it's both. We need to be able to be strong. We need to be able to learn how to develop boundaries and enforce those boundaries, hopefully without breaking somebody's nose, And so when your little ones go, hey, I want to be kind, and I love that, I choose and I am kind, do they also have the ability, and that's the question I always ask, do they also have the ability to not be kind if and when that situation comes forward? Because you guaranteed that people, even people that we love, are going to hurt us. Mm-hmm. That's the reality. And if we never have the power to take back and enforce our boundaries, all of those cycles that we're talking about, all the cycles, everything continues to repeat themselves.
So true.
I didn't mean to.
No, that very good perspective. Let's talk for a second about the bullying, because that's a tale as old as time, but the tactics have changed a little bit because of technology. Bullies now have more avenues than ever to target victims. And so I want to look at the fact that sometimes that presents a challenge for schools. How do they handle this bullying, because it's affecting the children in the school, but maybe it's happening off school grounds. So let's talk a little bit about that. What experiences have you seen in maybe school administrations not exactly knowing the best way to navigate bullying?
I think one of the things that we've found that was frustrating in our area is that, unfortunately, both kids were being punished. They were both being suspended from school.
What? No tolerance policy?
Yeah. Instead of following, what they said they would do, unfortunately, both kids were suspended. And that was a little frustrating for parents. Like, why is my child being punished again because another child was picking on him? And we've had some cases that a child has gone to court because he did pretty severe things to another child. And it was bullying situation. The other kids were picking on him, so the other kid thought he would up the ante and do a little more aggressive. And unfortunately, this is where we're getting some young kids taking their own lives because they don't know that there's an outlet to talk about, I don't like that Johnny just called me names, or Johnny pushes me, or, anything like that. And so, unfortunately, they don't feel like they can talk to mom and dad because mom and dad's busy. They have a lot of more pressure. I don't want to tell them. Or mom and dad thinks I'm perfect and I can't go tell them.
Or they're dysfunctional.
Exactly. And so, unfortunately, that's leading to young kids taking their own lives. And that's the ultimate hurt of bullying, is it can go to that far. I mean, we're talking 7 to 8 year olds are doing it. And that's what's sad, is we're losing such young children because other kids, sometimes they think it's funny.
Right.
The battle of bullying, I don't have an answer for. I mean, there's just no way to solve this problem. I can't wrap my head around how we undo what's been done with social media and with phones and the availability that kids have to be secret
Yes.
in their bullying and not get caught. And I mean, schools, their hands are tied. Obviously, I think there's better ways to deal with it than some are, but it is an incredibly difficult situation that I don't see an answer to.
It's so true. I mean, kids really can't escape it.
No, they can't.
Once upon a time, you might have found out you didn't get invited to the birthday party, and that had a little bit of a sting to it. But now you see exactly what you're missing because they're live streaming the birthday party. They might even throw a little ugly, negative comment out to the people who aren't at the party. So our kids don't really get a break. I mean, we had hard times in school, but you could go home and there was a home phone, and so you were kind of safe. It was your little haven. But now with kids having cell phones, kids don't have to worry about a parent answering the phone. They can have direct access, and some of those things just fly under the radar far too often.
All bullying comes down to, especially peer-to-peer bullying, it always comes down to a power disparity. If it's a social power, if it's a whatever. But when there's a power disparity, then that creates the opportunity for the bullying to happen. And then, like you addressed with the schools, then their policies are, well, we'll just punish everybody.
Yeah.
Right. That would be, just a little my quick soapbox on the no tolerance is that would be like an adult. I'm walking down the street, or I'm standing out in my front yard. Somebody comes up and punches me in the nose. I punch him back, and then I go to jail. You know what I mean? Right? That's what we're doing with our kids. We're taking away their power, right? We're also taking away their power, and we say, hey, look, just ignore it, just walk away, just do whatever else. That doesn't work. Oh, just turn off the phone. That doesn't work. The only thing that always works is to outgrow, not cut down the other person, but to outgrow the bullies. And that's the only thing you do. Now, if there's another situation that's tough, is like, what if it was institutionalized? Let's say it was, I had a situation where I was a sergeant in the military, and I had a major that didn't like me, right? And so now I've got somebody who was deliberately and has power over me, and I am not somebody you walk all over. But that was one of the biggest, most stressful times in my life, was dealing with that power disparity. And that's what we have to do. That's what we never teach our kids, how to deal with power, right?
And I think you brought up a good point. It's not just children.
Right.
That's the reality of it.
Correct.
I have been involved in several different organizations and several solid, good organizations. Powerful people who are successful in their careers, some people that I look up to. And at the end of the day, sometimes, man, they're the worst bullies.
Yes.
And it's an adult thing too, to criticize somebody, to tear them down. That is bullying. If you're name calling, that's bullying. And as an adult, if you're saying, well, that person's useless. Oh, they're such an idiot. Don't listen to them. Oh, you know what? They're so ditzy. They don't get it. They don't understand it. They can't grasp the concept. That's bullying. And until we as adults, in my opinion, can get over it and move on and stop tearing each other down, but start building each other up, we're going to see that with our kids. And I like, to your point, building that confidence within ourselves to say,
Well said.
that's not who I am. I'm not the idiot. I'm not the person they're saying I am. And I can stand with confidence and do that as an adult. But a kid?
Right.
A kid doesn't have the capacity to do that for the most part. And so as a parent, it's a struggle to always constantly reinforce my kids to say, hey, look, that's not who you are. I know who you are. You know who you are. You know, the one thing I've done with my 10-year-old is he's come home and he calls his brother's names. You know, my one son's name, he changes one letter just to piss him off. And it goes back and forth. And I say to him, I said, hey, buddy, do you understand right now what you're doing? What do you mean, Dad? I said, you're being a bully. And you just told me that you had kids at school today bullying you. How did that make you feel? Well, I'm not bullying. Yes, you are. I want to be clear with you. You are bullying your brother by changing his name by one letter. And that makes you feel like crap. And you're making your brother feel like crap. Where does the cycle stop? Are you going to make a choice today to stop the cycle and not make fun of your brother, not to call him names because you don't like it? And it's just this constant thing again. And as adults, I've seen it. Mm-hmm. So we've got to stop it as adults. If we want to piss and moan about it, let's stop it as adults. Let's stand up and be adults and stop the name calling and stop belittling each other, help build each other up. And then let's give that resilience to our kids to help them get through some of the stages they're going through.
Well said.
Yeah, I love that. Some of the schoolyard bullies don't leave it behind. They carry it into their workplaces, and we see that. And unfortunately, what we're seeing also is that reality TV and social media glorify that. And
it's funny.
It's funny. It's just a joke. If you're offended by it, there's a problem with you. So I believe we've got to find a way to flip the script. I love the fact that you're naming it, because sometimes people are doing that. And we all know bully, that's a negative term. Bullying, that's not something you really want to be associated with. So I think when we learn to call it out for what it is, that might have the power to bring it to a screeching halt. Christine, what about you? What are you seeing as we're talking about this concept of bullying being all around us?
I would also like to bring light to the fact that quite often bullies have trauma. Mm-hmm. Bullies have something that's driving them. They don't have control at home. They don't get to make choices. Whatever it is, whatever they're experiencing, they are finding their power on the playground, in the school classroom, and they are becoming the bully, but they have trauma. And I think that when we do have kids that are getting into trouble and they're being suspended and expelled and sent home, and that we need to dig deeper as the adults in their society to find out really what it is that's causing them to be the bully. They're not just
suspending them or something.
Yeah, they're not just naturally born bad kids. They have been through something.
And every kid can be a bully too.
Sure.
Even the kids being bullied can
be a
become
bully.
bullies, and recognize that and acknowledge it, and be to be able to recognize it's a huge thing, because like I said, my kid becomes a bully to his little brother. I'm sure he does it to other kids at school too, to be honest. Mm-hmm. If I'm honest, I'm sure he does, because that's what he's being taught by the other kids. And it's just that cycle of how do we just stop tearing each other down and change the political atmosphere, right? We don't want to get into politics, but there's a lot of bullying in politics, and there's a lot of bullying on social media. And, I mean, I have shows that I allow my kids to watch on YouTube. And even then, sometimes I have to be like, okay, this episode you can't watch. And they get upset, well, why can't we watch this? Well, because it's not appropriate, and there's some language or bullying that's happening in here that I don't appreciate, and I don't want you to learn that. So being able to actually pay attention to what they're doing too.
I love that. And we do see a lot of that in the political spectrum. We see an awful lot of that. Such a great conversation today. Unfortunately, we are about out of time. We could just go on and on about this subject. But what I want to do is give each of you a chance for just a final thought. So let's start right here with you, Scott.
Quick 30 seconds. I had two young ladies. One of them came into classes because she was a bully, and her parents wanted some empathy and some respect drilled into her. Another one because she was a victim. And it was interesting because at one point I had the roles completely reversed. As soon as the one that had power turned around, she started pushing back and bullying, so we had to swap things up there. So it's just like you said, sometimes the bullies are the victims and vice versa. So
I think for me, it's just bringing out the awareness of what's going